Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for bearing with me, for exhibiting such patience and staying on. Thank you to the organizing committee that has allowed me to share a few thoughts. I'll try to time myself because I don't have much time, and I could talk for hours, completing what has been said by the previous speakers. Whenever a new policy is shaped, first of all, we should ask the people that are at the front, that are at the first line, because they can tell us what the real problems are and guide us when making decisions. Within this framework and discussing quality, the topic of cost was not raised. You spoke of the example of tomatoes in between Polish tomatoes and Greek tomatoes, and I have to say that Greek tomatoes, Mr. Skarmoutsos, are far superior to Polish tomatoes, but the price in cost is quite impressive. This is something that I do not have the time to talk about in detail, and I'm hoping that Mr. Wilms from Netherlands would also be able to provide us with similar examples, because he has already provided us with wonderful models of what can be achieved, because the agri-food sector doesn't have to be about farming alone. And I am guessing that these farms would probably also be providing guidelines to, for example, people with heart defects and deficiencies or heart conditions, all in all, about what to eat and how to monitor their intake. Now, I had come up with a presentation. But first of all, let me say, you see at the first slide, Antonia Trichopoulou, MD. And you might be wondering what a physician is doing at the Agri-Business Forum. It was a coincidence that I saw on the news today that on the 23rd of September, there was the summit. Let me rephrase that. The High Summit for Sustainable Nutrition and Sustainable Food Systems took place, meaning systems that are environmentally friendly. That was a UN summit that took place end of September. We had representatives there from lots of countries. We had high-ranking officials in between. Among what they decided, they also said that there needs to be an approach that will center on health and that will promote sustainable nutrition regimes based on policies that will equally take into consideration health. Let us not forget that at the bottom line, we also see a consumer who is the one who will guide the policy and who will choose products based on the flavor and their health. So that was a brief introduction of what I have to say, and I will now move on to the core of my presentation. I would like to recall Antisthenes, a pre-Socrates philosopher, who said that the beginning of a right education is the examination of words. How do we utilize words? And do the words that we use mean the same thing to all of us? So within this framework, I would like, because in my presentation I was going to talk about the Mediterranean diet and traditional foods and sustainable agriculture, I would like, first of all, to define the Mediterranean regime. And the Secretary General said something that I fully embrace, that there's this trend in Greece, in our ministry, of talking about the Greek diet, the Greek regime. We must not cut off from the umbilical cord that unites us to all other Mediterranean countries. Yes, the Greek traditional regime, the Greek traditional diet is part of the traditional Mediterranean diet. So in our effort to support our products, to support health developments and health progress, yes, it is important to include made in Greece on all our products, but we need to move beyond that. But today I'm going to be discussing, therefore, the Mediterranean diet, a pyramid here that you're all very familiar with, which never says no to food, to animal foods, but at the same time speaks of moderation. Yes, why not have a glass of wine every day? But for adults only. This was adopted in 1999 by the Greek Ministry and the Greek Ministry of Health, and after a while, as years went by other ministries, Greek ministries. There are many descriptions of the Mediterranean diet, some of them poor replicas, and we have published many papers on the abuse that the term has suffered, since it is now used in very erroneous ways. I've seen chips, crisps, fried in sunflower oil that have been dubbed a Mediterranean diet product. So there is this tendency to abuse the term. The Mediterranean diet that has been proven by many studies and lots of research. You will find hundreds of papers on the Mediterranean diet, and it has been acknowledged globally as a healthy dietary pattern, is now more than that. It becomes a sustainable dietary pattern, not just a healthy dietary pattern. We're talking, therefore, about a diet that is environmentally friendly. And that's something we started claiming years ago. However, 2017 in Lancet, the Lancet Journal of Medicine is well known to all of us. It's the British, as well as the British Medical Journal and another journal of medicine. We say that anything that has been published in those medical journals is the Bible, is the holy word in our world. And they published a paper, a report that had to do with the environment, climate change, and nutrition. That report, I will read out only one thing. I have placed it on the slide as it was written down. I plagiarized it. Mr. Willett, who is an outstanding specialist from the University of Harvard and the first and foremost writer of this article, writes down that Mediterranean diet is a diet that not only maximizes longevity, improves health-related quality of life, but it is also ecologically sustainable and environmentally friendly. And we can include the Greek traditional diet here. And by that term, I forgot to say that before, but please be very attentive. We all say that our products are wonderful, yes, but what are their specifications? We have heard wonderful things today by all panelists, both in this session and the previous ones, with respect to authenticity. Yes, authenticity is important, but it's not just about saying it, it's also about confirming it. So the Greek traditional diet, the Mediterranean traditional diet, is the diet of the peoples that have inhabited the Mediterranean basin, shores, and it is based on olive oil, because you cannot have a Mediterranean diet without olive oil. It can be a Mediterranean type diet, it can be termed a Mediterranean-like diet, but it cannot be the original traditional Mediterranean diet without olive oil originating from the Mediterranean. And this is something that applied all the way up to the 60s, and some of us who are not as young as we used to be, we know that in the 60s there was a huge reshuffling of many things. For example, inequalities and biases. These are things that are much smaller today than they used to be back then. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if we want to construct the future, we need to do that on sound foundations. So when talking about the traditional Mediterranean diet, we're not just referring to the infamous pyramid. It also has to do with, for example, traditional foods such as okra. And I'm saying okra because that's what I had today for lunch. These are our traditional foods. This is an immense wealth that remains untapped. And to a large extent, it is hard to define. It was mentioned earlier that we've got 113 PDO and PGI products, which is wonderful. But my little team in the past really had to struggle when we defined traditional food. A traditional food is something that was on the market a generation ago. We're talking about 2021 today. So whatever was marketed in 2005 and moving backwards into the past, that is traditional food. And let's mention here, for example, pastelli, which is the sesame bar with honey. That is traditional food. And we Greeks, we have a long tradition in that. Italians too, other Mediterraneans too. So we came up with a paper where we described and defined traditional foods, and we ran a chemical analysis of an average family, Mediterranean family menu, including Greece, of course. And what realized was that with respect to vitamins, minerals, I'm not talking about trace elements and more exquisite, let's say, ingredients, was exactly what we needed to have with respect to EC daily recommendations. Forget supplements, forget vitamins, and cook, frying things in olive oil, and add the wonderful garlic and onion that we have in Greece, and saute that. Traditional foods are things that are the reason why we seek out those wonderful grandmothers that cook the way things were cooked decades ago. And we took those foods and we run them through chemical tests, and we realized that they can have more than 1,000 nutrition claims. And I'm not talking about health claims, because that's a lot more difficult to obtain. So these products might say rich in vitamin C or low in cholesterol, the way we see in a host of other products. Here on an indicative scale, we analyzed a green pie from the island of Crete with 8 different greens, and we realized that in this pie, with respect to the flavonoid content, quercetin was increased, and we find that, for example, in red wine, black tea, and we compare that with red wine, black tea, and apple juice, and you can see how the content was so much more considerable, more marked in the green pie, although it is not well known, whereas we all know about the other products because they're highly marketed. Pastelli sesame bars. We hear about protein bars, we hear about cereal bars, we hear about things that are beautifully advertised. But sesame bars, traditional sesame bars, are rich in calcium, are rich in many substances, and of course, they've got no saturated fats. As of this morning, we're talking about the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. I've placed many appeals to mention the Mediterranean diet in those, and this has not been the case so far. And today, once again, these two have been neglected. So I would like to draw your attention to that fact as well. So this is more or less what I wanted to share with you in brief. There we go, that was the slide I was looking for. This is my final slide to conclude. But this was something that I was very impressed by. This was publicized in the English Journal of Medicine, September 2021, a few days ago. As I mentioned before, the New England Journal of Medicine, BNJ, and the Lancet Journal, the editors of the three top publications are the ones who will say that you can publish this wherever you want, and you can copy it, and you can share it, and you can disclose it, because this is an urgent invitation to all of you to take action. So it's a call for emergency action to limit and mitigate the climate crisis, to recover biodiversity at last, and through all that, find a way to protect our own health. Thank you very much for your attention.